In so many of our ancient stories and mythologies, the desert is the place of testing. So today, Nathan and I are going to discuss how the deserts of Tatooine test Padme, Qui-Gon, and a little slave boy that they meet along the way named Anakin Skywalker. We also ask the question, is Anakin from Tatooine? And if he isn't, what hints does that give us about his role in the story? So we're going to pick up our Phantom Menace conversation right where we left off. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so Archer gets his little spot in the limelight here. Yeah, any of your thoughts on this scene here with R2, but also the decision to head to Tatooine?
I like how we single out a droid for the first time, and he has, this droid is special. He has personality, and we get to, and we know he's special because he's treated specially, he's treated in a special way by the Queen. You know, she thanks him for saving the ship, and you know he gets a spa day as a reward, right? Padme cleans him up. And I like the contrast of, you know, there's this kind of through line throughout all of Star Wars of how we deal with droids and technology. And you look at the Trade Federation, how they treat TC-14, right? She's bringing drinks, and they're, you know, making her, you know, go interact with the Jedi, go talk to them for us. We're too scared to go in and see them ourselves. They use the battle droids and use her as another protocol droid to do their dirty work for them. And the good guys actually treat the droids with respect, right? R2 is, you know, they learn his name. You know, we don't get TC-14's name in the movie. We just know that because we're nerds. But as the first droid that's actually named and has a personality, and it's treated, or he's treated as if, you know, he is another character. They you know, he gets a reward, and they thank him. You know, it deserves our gratitude. It's like, why? It's a robot, you know, but it's cements the fact that these are the good guys, right? They are treating the underappreciated, those who are ignored, with respect. So a droid that could just be like, you know, a little robot, it might as well be my phone, right? Might as well be my car. They're treating R2 as if he is like the pet, right? The family dog, right? So yeah, so I like that.
Yeah, I do too. Yeah, that's a good observation, especially since, we talked about that last time, but George always said, you know, the droids are just like toasters in the Star Wars universe. They pay attention to them as much as we do toasters. What are your thoughts on this? Because she makes Padme do it. I've always kind of wondered, like, why does Padme do it? Does she volunteer to do that beforehand, or, because, you know, we know now, but like in the story, we don't know that's the actual, like, Padme's the actual queen yet. So I just find it interesting that she picks Padme to go clean R2. What's your thoughts on that? Or do you know anything on why that's the case?
I think it kind of just speaks to, my first thought is that Padme isn't this, again, it's contrasted with the Trade Federation, right? The Trade Federation, the Neimoidians are sort of this fake royalty, like they're you know, costumed in like borrowed robes. Like this is fancy costumes that they probably stole from some planet when they took it over. And they're, you know, they're lazy. They're letting the droids do all the work for them. They're cowards. And to me, it's like Padme, she's using this decoy thing as a means to protect her, but she's also fully, you know, embodying that role. She's not above getting her hands dirty. She'll clean a dirty droid. She'll do, you know, we can see that later that she knows how to wield a gun with the rest of them, with the best of them. So she's not, hiding in her palace, you know, incompetent, unable to do anything. She's like, if I have to be a handmaiden, I'm going to play that part fully, and I'm not going to be, you know, I'm not going to ask my handmaidens to do something that I'm not prepared to do myself, kind of thing. So I think it kind of just, I don't know exactly the function of it in terms of the plot or anything. I haven't really thought about that before. But to me, just what it says to me right in this moment, my first thought is that it just speaks to her character, and just a good person, not an out of touch royal, you know, monarch who's incompetent. You know, she's or a jerk, or, you know, talking down to everybody. She's become one of her subjects. It's like the undercover boss thing, that show. It's like that, where she's willing to do that. I just think that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely speaks to her humility. Yeah. And you see that expounded on the Clone Wars too. Yeah. She's always serving. I really appreciate that. That's what leadership is, right? Service. So I think that's cool. I just wondered if you knew if George was like what he was kind of thinking in that moment or if you just thought or heard anything like why, but that was always my hunch, is that just to show her humility. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important that it is the first time we meet Padme is in this scene. The first thing she's doing is taking care of this droid, this underappreciated character.
Good
It's
call.
the
I didn't catch
first
that.
thing we see her doing. I'm pretty sure this is her first. Well, it's not. Well, it's her first time we get her by name, but the first time we saw her is when she says, "We are brave, Your Highness," right before they leave Naboo. So I guess it's technically not the first time we see her. She does anything or says anything, but it's her first time she's named. It's the first time she's highlighted. She's singled out from the rest of the handmaidens. So I think it's important, that she is, and she will, she'll serve that same role for Anakin later, right? Like this character that a lot of people underestimate or may not pay attention to. She's willing to, stick with him through a really, really tough time in his life. And episode 2, when he's making horrible decisions and he's going down a dark path, when anyone else in their right mind would run away from that, she's like, no, I'm going to stick with them and help them through this. And so I think we see that first here, like a small version of that here with R2-D2, where she's willing to clean this droid like a toaster. She's willing to give this toaster a spa day, right?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, okay. It's a special person to do that. And I do like this next scene we get with her. We'll get to that in a second, but we see more of that as she deals with Jar Jar. So, but we'll get to that. That's the next scene.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I appreciate too. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is only one of 2 times in the entire episode that we see the Queen smile. Right? She kind of gives a little smirk at R2 here. And then at the very, very end, when it's actually Padme again, this is the only 2 times, if I think, in the whole movie she actually shows any kind of emotion or really, at least joy. It's just kind of fun to see that little spark of joy.
Yeah,
there.
and I think it really shows. Yeah, I mean, that says something about R2, right? That he's got this special. This droid is giving this queen some peace and happiness in the really, really dark time for her. Like this droid saved their lives, right? It's not just, I kind of forget that thing, like without R2, these people would be dead. It's hard for me to remember sometimes, but this droid did a big thing. And so, it does deserve their gratitude. And it's true. That's a rare moment of emotion from the queen. Even behind that mask of makeup, she's still expressing that. And I guess it might be the only time we see the decoy, Sabe, I can't remember how you say her name, but the Keira Knightley character. I think it's probably the only time we definitely see her emote and smile. And but yeah, it is the only time we see one of 2 times maybe we see whoever's in the makeup, whether it's Padme or Sabe smiling. So yeah, that's a good catch, good pull. I never really noticed that before, I noticed it, but I never thought about that. That's a good point.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. And I just love the idea. This is totally random, but I just love the idea that just thinking of R2 from his story arc, because George always said we're watching this story play out through the eyes of the droids, and I just think it's so cool just to see that. Yeah, I just love R2. He's just great. And to see to think about this as like a moment of joy, he saved her life. And then you think about Return of the Jedi, the very end, that moment of joy when they're just celebrating on Endor. It's like, so cool. R2 saw all that, He's just been the one consistent family member who's beginning to end,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true,
anyway,
right?
That's just kind of a nerd moment.
No,
I like it.
It's true. Yeah, it's cool to see. It's such an odd decision to have a character like that, this robot that doesn't really have a face, doesn't have any dialogue really, but he has so much personality. But that Lucas would use him to be the through line that this isn't touched on in the movies, but he's talked about how R2-D2 is the one who reports this whole story to, is it the shaman of the Wills or something like that? At the end. And that's where the original title, Star Wars, as taken from the Journal of the Wills, they get the story. Whatever the Wills are, and still we don't quite know. they get the story from R2D2. R2D2. George said, I think in Revenge of the Sith, the making of Revenge of the Sith book, he talks about R2D2 meets at the end of this. He meets with, or many years later, I don't know, hundreds, thousands years later, when our robots are can live forever or live as long as they need to. He encounters I think it's a shaman of the wills or someone, maybe it's just a will. And he relates the story of Star Wars of the Skywalkers.
Wow, that's cool.
I have to, I can't remember exactly. When we get to Revenge of the Sith, I have notes on that. I just can't remember exactly what it was, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's really cool. That's a neat perspective. Yeah, and I was just kind of thinking along those lines. Yeah, just kind of a neat bookend with R2. Yeah, I can't go wrong with R2. Yeah, any other thoughts on the scene? The Qui-Gon informs them we're heading to Tatooine, and
well, we still have that kind of tension between Panaka and Qui-Gon, where Panaka's like, this is a bad idea, bad move, and we'll see why once we get to Tatooine. We'll see why Panaka was concerned, but also it's that moment of Qui-Gon saying, "You got to trust my judgment," and there's a lot of that going on in this movie where Qui-Gon is making a lot of weird decisions, at least seemingly weird to everybody else, but we're invited to trust him as an audience, and the other characters are, and it pays off, right? He's the one who sets this whole, even from a larger scale, he's the one who sets off this whole story of the Chosen One, how the balance is brought to the Force because of the he got the ball rolling because he started it. But within the confines of this movie, it's a lot of the key moments that are that affect the plot are his decision. The decision to stick with Jar Jar that turns the tide in the battle at the end. Same with Anakin. Same with going to Tatooine. Same with putting faith in Obi-Wan, saying train this boy, all this stuff. So yeah, I just like that Qui-Gon is, again, it's a moment of Qui-Gon saying, I know I'm the weird one right now. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy, but trust my judgment. And he uses that line again later on to kind of, I don't know, he throws it kind of back in Padme's face, like the Queen trusts my judgment, even though he knows. But he's like still, anyway, he just this line shows that phrase, trust my judgment, works or shows up again later on, and he kind of uses it in a kind of a playful way there. But yeah, I just like that because it's a weird, it's a weird thing. It's like saying we're going to stop in like the worst. We're going to stop, make a pit stop at the armpit of the galaxy because we need to. Our ship is damaged, but trust me, we'll be fine. We're not going to get mugged or anything. Things are going to be fine. We'll figure it out. Yeah, it's just a scene. I just like how it again reinforces that Qui-Gon is a rebel, yet, and he's a little unorthodox, but he is. So far, we've trusted him. It's turned out okay. So let's trust him again. Let's see what this Tatooine place has to offer.
Oh, that's so neat. I've never caught that before. How often he has said that in this movie of like, oh, we need to, trust me, or he's the weird guy. I've never picked up on that before. Oh, that's so neat. I know I keep saying this, but man, it's such a good picture of faith. He's trusted in the Force, even though it makes zero sense. And that's just so life, isn't it? Just go down paths you never thought you'd step foot on. Yeah. And he's just totally trusting. Yeah. That's really neat. And I do like that tension. I get the sense of like Qui-Gon's almost like the feeling guy, almost like a hippie. And Panaka's almost like the guy who's like all logic, he's the academic. Putting two in the same room and they're like, what? No, this doesn't work. So that's a good picture. Neat tension. Yeah, and we've seen that already. Like you said, so many times everyone's questioning Qui-Gon. Obi-Wan's going to question him. Jar Jar questions him. Panaka's questioning him. The Queen's going to question him. I've never thought about that before.
Everyone is just against Qui-Gon. Yeah.
The Jedi Council, they're all going to be against him. Yeah. Wow, that's neat. I love Qui-Gon. I have always loved Qui-Gon, but the more we delve into this, the more I'm like, man, he's just like one of my favorite Jedi. I just love him.
Yeah, I got into Qui-Gon a lot the last couple of years as I've kind of been reevaluating these movies and looking at him with new eyes. And I always loved him too, but Obi-Wan was always my favorite as a kid because I thought he was cooler. He's the one who takes down Darth Maul and all that. But now, like, understanding his role in the story, it's like, whoa, he's so much cooler than I ever would have thought as a kid. Um, even though I did love him, it's just like I love him even more now. So it's I love Qui-Gon. He's just a great, I don't know, base to start, a great foundation to start off with, a great picture. A first introduction to a Jedi is him, and that's just perfect because everything else gets measured against him as for the rest of the story, and he's just a perfect, standard to measure against for a Jedi, or just for a good character, just for a good person in this story. He's just embodies all that for sure.
Yeah, I agree. He just is the picture of the Jedi. Yeah, and what a contrast again, just him between him and the Jedi Council where they are now. Yeah, and just seeing how we need to come back to where Qui-Gon is basically, and Luke will bring that full circle. Anakin and Luke, kind of come back to where Qui-Gon is, yeah, and bring the Jedi back into balance. Yeah, nice. Cool. Yeah, and then here's the scene you just referenced with her introduction to Jar Jar.
Yeah, I love this scene. It's so small, but there's so much in here.
Tell me your thoughts, man.
Okay, I was going to ask you because I've been talking a lot. I was like, you can.
No, you first. You're the master. Okay. I'm just the apprentice.
No. I've just watched Star Wars too many times and taken too many notes. It does not make me in any way more qualified or smarter. But since you asked, I will give you my thoughts. Yeah.
Yes.
I just love this scene because it's Jar Jar and Padme's first interaction here. It's so interesting because for one thing, this is part of our introduction to Padme. We're really kind of seeing she's been singled out. She's not just one of the handmaidens who's just said a random line before. We weren't paying any attention to her as an audience because she didn't have a name. She didn't really matter. But now she has a name. She's got something to do. She's taking care of R2-D2, so we're paying attention. And we don't know she's the queen yet. And what's cool about this is it's our first interaction between a Naboo and a Gungan. And the relationship between these two races, these two peoples, is part of the larger story. This plot of it's very childish and very kind of PBS Kids, whatever. But the story is about friendship and sorry, not friendship, teamwork. It's about friendship too, but big part of that is teamwork and building that bridge across this gulf between two unlikely allies. And I like that Jar Jar is probably at his most charming in this scene. He's not screaming or breaking anything. And he's actually he's trying to find a friend, right? He's trying to find someone to talk to, someone he can vent to about all this. And Padme, appears to be this normal, nice girl. She's not an intimidating, distant queen who looks down on everyone, like we said. She's and she's not like a stern soldier like Panaka. She's not telling him to be quiet, sit down, don't touch anything. She doesn't say any of that to him. Like Obi-Wan, shoved him into a broom closet basically when they're on the ship with all the droids. He's like, just don't touch anything, stay here. We got the adults are busy. We got stuff to do. And here, she's this very friendly, approachable person, and Jar Jar picks up on that, and it's the first time he's kind of really been vulnerable with anybody. That someone he feels like he can talk to. He complained to Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan in the sub, but they weren't really having it. And so Jar Jar feels comfortable enough to talk to her, and he gets a chance to connect with someone about this crazy venture they're all on today. He's like, he goes through my day started with breakfast, pretty normal with breakfast, and all of a sudden I'm grabbing the Jedi and bam, I'm here. However he says in his Jar Jar way.
So great.
Yeah, and it's such a small little thing because this plants the seed. This is the first step towards building that alliance that will save them, that saves their planet. It's just it starts with this tiny little conversation between the two of them. I just love how things start so small in this story and then they just snowball and it gets bigger and bigger. And eventually these two will be leading armies together to, destroy the evil that's plaguing them. And so I just like that it starts such a simple things like, oh, how's your day going? Oh, it's been crazy. Isn't this weird? We're on this ship. We're going to Tatooine. Who knows where that is? What's going on? And it's interesting. I think is that I also think it's interesting because Padme seems like she's never really encountered a Gungan before. She says, "You're a Gungan, aren't you?" And so there's clearly a distance between not just the Naboo and the Gungans, but also the Queen, the leader.
Yeah.
She's like, I don't really know about this society that much. She's still young. She's still naive. And so these two societies have had animosity toward each other, but these are these two representatives in this scene. They're kind of the ambassadors unintentionally in this scene. They're again, it's just planting the seeds of that relationship. It's like, well, the first time that well, this is like, never mind, that's a bad analogy. But yeah, it's like I'm just repeating myself, but I just like that. I like the fact that she's learning about Gungans through this. She's learning, again, it seems, we're not 100% sure, but it seems like she hasn't met a Gungan before. She's like, you're a Gungan, aren't you? She's maybe heard about them. She's maybe seen a picture or maybe seen one from a distance, but she's never really interacted with one. And sure, Jar Jar's never really interacted with Naboo before. So,
Wow.
So I just like that it's just this first crossing. They're both meeting halfway through, crossing this bridge to interact with each other. They're kind of forced in this situation, but I just like how small it starts, and eventually this leads to this whole big, alliance between the two.
Wow, man, that's such a really like deep observation. I never picked up on that. I never picked up that she had, just the way she talks to him, like doesn't seem like she's ever met, at least it never interacted with a Gungan. Yeah. Wow. I love this kind of stuff.
Oh, it's just cool seeing her
so many times
grow as a ruler. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. That's so cool. I love that. Yeah. This, the like Gandalf says, right? The stones that start the avalanche.
Yeah, totally.
And I was thinking about this as you were talking too, just looking at the scenes, like here's this room full of rejects, basically at this point, you know, as far as we as an audience know, this little random droid, this outcast Gungan, and this little servant girl, you know, all just hanging out in the ship while, like you said, while the adults are doing all the work.
Well, yeah, and these are the most important characters, actually, even though no one in the story treats them with much respect. I mean, Padme gets respect from the queen of her decoys, but like they're not society or whatever their role in the universe is. It's small. It's, it goes from toaster to handmaiden, and in between there's this jester, fool, outcasts that no one wants anything to do with. So yeah, but that these three characters change the whole plot kind of has been hinging on what they do, or will hinge on what they do at some point. And it's just it's not these. We love the Jedi. They're cool. Captain Panaka. He's cool. He fires a blaster. There's the cool characters, but the story, the plot, the solution to their problems doesn't quite rest with them. It rests with these insignificant characters, and that's just all throughout Star Wars, which I love.
Yeah, it is. It's such a beautiful thing. Yeah, and even I was thinking Qui-Gon even later on in Tatooine during the pod race. He's even looking down to Padme, and he's been learning to respect these. I don't know what you call them, little characters, if you will. I don't know, or the ones that people don't value as much in universe. But yeah, to see him change too, and to see Padme this little thread, and with Jar Jar this little thread, and R2 this little thread, and Anakin this little thread, these little nobodies that shape the galaxy. Yeah. Yeah, that's so neat. And I'm just thinking about even how George navigated Padme's story in the Clone Wars. She has so many good arcs of just her humility and speaking for the little guy and standing up for what's right. Yeah. And where do you learn that? You learn that in places like this.
Yeah,
serving.
We see the beginnings of that, beginning of her character developing here. Yeah, it's so cool to see where she starts. Yeah.
Yeah. And to see her, I really like that contrast with the Trade Federation, but I'm also thinking with Palpatine. Yeah, here's a guy who's supposed to be representing this planet. And boy, he's trying to take over the world. Yeah, we have this little servant girl who's actually the queen, but still, she plays herself in humility and serves. Yeah. Wow. That's so neat. What a neat contrast. And just, everybody relates to the humble guy, the little guy. We all love that story. And here we are right here.
Yeah, I love this scene. Fun little scene. Just so much in a tiny little, what is it? 30 seconds of screen time. But, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And Jar Jar's dialogue. I like his dialogue. I think it's great.
Yeah.
Boom. And what do you call his breakfast? Morning crunchies or something like that? Morning munchies?
Yeah, morning munchin', yeah. And he's being, and you can see R2, you can't really tell, but you can kind of get the sense R2 is, he and Padme are kind of like, what's going on with this gun? Like it seems like he's smiling, because Padme's smiling. She's looking at him, she's like, wow, this guy's funny, this guy's silly. She's clearly isn't put off by him. She's like the first person who's like smiled at him all day. And it's like, yeah. And I think I'm sure R2-D2 kind of is getting even though he, gave him a bump earlier when he's getting up to repair the ship, he's like, get out of my way. Because R2's got an attitude. We all know that. But, yeah, I like it ends on a positive note. They're getting along and yeah, R2-D2 seems like he makes a happy beeping noise at the end of the scene. Seems like he's on board with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like it. And I really like the picture of Jar Jar almost as a child, or like maybe a special needs child or something that everybody kind of goes, I don't know. But because he just jumps right in and he's just himself and he just says hello. And we've all met people like that, especially I remember like as a kid at school, there's always that one kid who's just not afraid of anything. He just jumps up and starts talking to you and they're just themselves and being goofy. And yeah, I just think that's really a neat thing. And I respect that, I respect that a lot because those people are people too. And they're valuable. And I think Jar Jar displays that. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me think of my brother, Zach, because he, that I'm just saying, if anyone's listening, they may not know who my brother is, but yeah, he's special needs and he, it's the same thing. He's so friendly. He's the first person to say hi to someone when I would be walking with him through the hallways in school. It took us forever because he was saying hi to every single person in the hallway and wanted to have a little conversation with them. And everyone loved Zach. He was so friendly, and everyone picked up on that. And I was thinking, yeah, what a great way that we should all, a great model to follow.
Yeah,
we should all live like he finds joy in the smallest things, and he does have that. He's blessed to have that childlike wonder. Even in his 20s now. And it's like he hasn't really gotten rid of that. I'm like, wow, that's a blessing. That's a huge, great, wonderful gift to have, to see the world that way. And I try to take note of that and try to remember that and go, I should be, sometimes the situation needs a little more Zach and a little less Josiah. I need to be more like him. And sometimes, yeah, with Jar Jar, it's, that can be, yes, there is immaturity, there is naivete that comes with being childish, but there's also, the innocence, the sense of wonder, and just kind of cutting through. They can sometimes see things so clearly, so simply. Like Yoda says, truly wonderful the mind of a child is. Like that kid in that scene comes up with the problem that the adults, the great Jedi masters, couldn't come up with. And it's like sometimes it's not a matter of just having more experience or being more smart. It's just that kids can kind of cut through it all, cut through the murkiness and cut through all the stuff that's unnecessary and get right to the point. And so I think you see that for sure in Jar Jar, and I think it's a great, those kind of people for sure, as you say, they do exist in our society, and a lot of times, like Jar Jar, they're underappreciated. And it's a great reminder.
Yeah, and what a good lesson in humility, just to respect them and listen to them. Like you said, they can teach us more often than we could ever teach them. Yeah, and they just see things in the simplicity and the innocence and their view and their joy. It's like, man, you guys are awesome. Yeah. Yeah. And I think Jar Jar just embodies that, especially in that scene. Yeah. That's a really neat scene like that, where you just get that sense he's just an innocent guy who wants to do what's right, and he just loves people and just pure, Yeah. That's really cool. I love that. It's a good lesson for us. I never realized quite how much of a theme that was in episode 1 before. Boy, it's just like almost every other scene we're reminded of again. Like, wow. Yep. Humility. Doing what's weird, but doing the right thing. Always doing what's right. I just think that's super cool. Yeah. And I love this is moving on a little bit. I love all these transition shots. They're so simple, of just the ship coming to land. But I mean, how many times have you ever played it out with a ship as like a toy or something, or like I will still do that occasionally when I'm like driving my car. And like in my mind, I feel like I'm landing the car or whatever. It's just those simple shots like that. I don't know. Those always fascinate me. But they're great transitions. And again, we talk about this over and over again. But just the show don't tell. Just a sweet little transition shot. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm not sure exactly where Lucas would have gotten this from, but it is very consistent in Star Wars that Star Wars often shows these long shots of ships taking off and landing. It doesn't really cut away. You see the whole process. And it might have something to do with the fact that he loves cars. He loves vehicles. He's a bit of a gearhead. He loves just the character of he made a whole short film that was just this kind of tone poem of just this race car just driving around, and there's no story. There's nothing really happening. It's just this car driving, and it's really beautiful to watch. And it's just, he clearly has an appreciation of just things doing their thing, a vehicle doing its thing. Where a lot of other shows, you just cut from hey, let's get off the planet, and they just cut to they're already in space moving on, but we've arrived, and it just cuts to them departing. But you see this in Clone Wars also. You see it in all the movies. Not every time, but a lot of the time, the ship is shown taking off and landing in its entirety. And it's a much slower paced kind of thing. It's a much more old school. Everything's very, very quick paced now, and editing tends to get quicker and more, rapid as film history goes forward into the 80s, 90s, and 2000s today. But you see it in the Flash Gordon serials that the ship, you always see the ships moving, slow, taking off and landing. They always make a point to show that. So maybe that's where he got it. But I do just, it's something that feels very Star Wars to me, is when you see the ships taking off and landing, you see that whole long shot. It makes me think of the DVD menus back in the day, because they were always the menu was always like a ship landing, because it's a nice wide shot, and then they have it pauses and the menu shows up, and you see the little different scenes from the movie and everything.
I miss those.
It just feels DVD menus, DVD Blu-ray menus. They don't really have those anymore.
No,
I saw a video on YouTube. I was scrolling through. I didn't watch the whole thing, but someone said the title of the video was the lost art of DVD menus and stuff like that. I'm like, it's so cool, because it was true, because they really did immerse you. A lot of times they went really, really hard and really made a huge effort to kind of make navigating the menus feel like you're in the world and everything. It was really cool. So yeah, it's a shame that those are gone. But oh well, maybe they'll come back in some form later. But
yeah.
Anyway, all that to say,
Mm-hmm.
all that to say, I do like these. There's some very distinctive, very Star Wars about those long shots of the ship approaching the planet and then landing and taking off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always appreciated them. And then in episode 4, there's anticipation in that too. Where they're getting ready, it's just spending time. Yeah. I love it. Yeah, I agree. Nice. Any other thoughts on that before we jump on to Tatooine?
No, let's get to the arrival of the Queen's ship to the desert.
Okay. I didn't know this until about a year ago, that thing that Obi-Wan's working on is the actual hyperdrive. I never quite picked up on that. It's super cool to think about. And then, I'm rewatching Clone Wars with my boys, and in the Malevolence arc, you remember the big giant ship? When Obi-Wan goes in to turn off the hyperdrive, it looks very similar to that. And in Grievous's ship, I had never. It's massive, but it's a very similar design. I was like, oh, hey, points for continuity there, and Obi-Wan back in the hyperdrive. It was cool. Yeah. But then we get this, Obi-Wan gives the report, hyperdrive's gone. But we get this eerie sense again. It's like, oh yeah, the shadow's still out there. I sense a disturbance in the Force. What are your thoughts on that? Is he sensing Darth Maul, or just what do you think he's referring to?
Yeah,
they don't know, obviously, but
yeah, and we have, at this point as an audience, we're not quite sure yet either. We learned just that something is disturbing the Force. We learned that's even a thing, that there is a disturbance in the Force. I think this is the first time that that phrase is used. Obi-Wan says, "I have a bad feeling about it" earlier, but this is the first time we have this sense that like a stone thrown into a still pond, the ripples keep emanating outward, right, far from their origin. So the Sith are who knows where, but there's this ripple effect the Jedi can pick up on. We're not sure where this disturbance is coming from. We don't really know where the Sith are. We just know they exist. But both the Jedi feel it, and this happens just after the introduction of the two Sith, right, and the name Sith. So it's our first indication that the Jedi are starting to sense the Sith part of it and their schemes. Like before, they could have been sensing just the bad vibes of the Trade Federation or the Nemoidians. They knew there was some kind of larger power, but now they realize this is something that's really, really disturbing the Force. Like that's something that's a bigger word. That's a more punchier, more impactful way of talking about it. And so it's a bigger deal. Now Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan are both on the same page. They're both, Qui-Gon's not going, I don't sense anything. He and Obi-Wan are both feeling it. Actually, Qui-Gon says it first. I sense a disturbance in the Force, and Obi-Wan says, I feel it also. So it's the first time that they're on the same page with this disturbance. So it's clearly not going away. Whatever it was, they haven't escaped it by leaving Naboo. The ripples are affecting, they're going out farther than they would have previously thought. They can feel it on Tatooine as well. So, yeah, so it's the Sith and the schemes of the Sith that they're sensing. They just don't know it yet. They're not sure what that means. But it seems to be more of an immediate threat than it used to be.
Yeah, it's kind of a neat picture too. It gives you this sense of like, kind of like I think about those movies like if you're in the jungle and you're being watched, like you're being hunted by something. You kind of get that sense here. Yeah, where it's just the eyes are watching, something coming, but you don't know what, and it's the Phantom again, right? The Phantom's out there. And I like how Qui-Gon's the one who acknowledges that. Because, before at the beginning, like you said, he's like, yeah, whatever. You're thinking too much, Obi-Wan. Just be here, be right now. It's not just nervous Obi-Wan. It's, no, Qui-Gon's here too. It's out there. It's coming. Yeah.
Yeah, as Qui-Gon is in the moment, that means that the ripples have now reached them. Like, it's not, Obi-Wan before was kind of searching for problems out there. Like, it's either out there ahead of us or it's going to happen later. I'm not exactly sure, but now Qui-Gon is feeling it. He's staying present in the moment, but the ripples are, the disturbing of the Force is felt in the moment. And so it's becoming more and more real to him. And so he's aware of it as well as Obi-Wan was. And Obi-Wan kind of, his suspicions, his fears are now kind of validated because it's still whatever the problem is, it's now more and more present and more, and it's following them. It's following them across the galaxy from the Naboo to where, what is it? If there's a bright center to the galaxy, they're the planet that it's farthest from, that's where they are now, right? And the death, the dread, the disturbance is still has reached them that far. So yeah, I like that. I think it's a cool. It keeps the stakes going, even though we've hit a pit stop, and at least it seems like it for the audience. We're like, we've been waylaid. We'll get back to the story later. No, things are still happening. The threat is still there, and for all we know, the Sith could be on Tatooine. We don't know where they are yet. We haven't seen that. So as an audience, we're not exactly sure how close the danger, the threat is. We just know that the Jedi are aware of it, so that's good. But hopefully they can deal with it.
Mm-hmm. Good call. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, yeah, so many things I just don't even catch, man. It's awesome.
Well, it's tricky trying to watch these with new eyes and go, okay, what do I don't know at this point? I actually don't know that. I don't know the Sith are on Coruscant. I don't know what Coruscant is. I just know there's these two ghosts out there, and they appear in hologram form. They're just appearing. They just blip in and out of the story. So they could be waiting behind a sand dune, ready. Well, actually later they are, but we don't know that yet. So there is this threat. Like, we know where the Trade Federation is, but we don't know where these ghosts are. These two Sith phantoms. We don't know where they are yet. So,
Ooh, I love that. Just the whole idea of Phantom again. This looming Phantom. Yeah. So it's a neat picture, especially the Sith. Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't help that we're also in a desert. Like, talk about like kind of just the first shot of this, like the scene. Like, we don't know what Tatooine is. And then they land, it's like, oh, we're in a desert. And what is a desert? Desert is the exact opposite of the garden, right? The beautiful paradise right before. We've gone from one extreme to the other, where it was, like this desert is a place of chaos / potential, just like the ocean was, right? So like they're both there, and especially and in ancient stories, and even stories today, good things don't necessarily usually happen in deserts. Deserts are usually places where people don't go. We don't go to the ocean. We don't go to deserts. Why? Because we can't really survive in either one very well. But in those places of chaos and potential, in the ocean, we get the Gungans, we get Jar Jar. In the desert, we get Anakin. So from these two opposite yet similar in their chaotic potential, we get the two solutions to our problems. And so there's an idea that Joseph Campbell, who George Lucas was inspired by a lot to write Star Wars, he had a phrase which was the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek.
It's cool.
Yeah, it's like this idea that you have to go, and that's a very, very old story, right? Why is the knight fight the dragon? Why does he go to the cave? Because there's treasure there, or there's the the maiden that he has to save, that classic story. It's the thing you need. The goal is never in, it's not surrounded by, it's not in a lovely garden. It's not this beautiful place. That's really easy. It's always this easy to get to. It's always this dangerous pit, this dark, scary place where there's monsters. And so the thing actually you need, the Gungans, the solution to your problem as the Naboo, are in and amongst the sea monsters that are underwater. The Anakin, the kid who will get you the parts you need to have your ship take off and eventually, bring balance to the Force.
Yeah, save the galaxy.
Zooming back in, we zoomed out there, but zooming back in, this kid, he's in this desert place that you don't want to explore. This horrible, sketchy town, actually has this there's this little diamond in the rough there called Anakin Skywalker, and he's actually going to help you. But you have to go to the creepy, scary part of town in order to find him. So I like that.
Wow,
I just like that we've
picture.
gone from the garden, beautiful like paradise place, to the desert, the lifeless, awful place no one wants to go. And they could both be disasters, the ocean with the sea monsters and the desert with who knows what, but they both end up being helpful because we get Anakin and Jar Jar. And the trick is to see the potential in spite of the chaos, and that's what Qui-Gon does, right? That's why Qui-Gon is the one who discerns that in these scary places, in these unknown places, he finds the treasure in that cave that we need. This scary cave, he finds the thing that we need. So I like that.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, you find that in every single story ever, pretty much. You gotta go through the wilderness to get to the paradise. Yeah. That's so cool. And just as you were talking, I was thinking about how much George has really played that up. Again, it's things I was familiar with, but just seeing it in a new light, Panaka's like, you can't take a highness there, it's run by gangsters. And Qui-Gon, he gives this sense of like, no, we can't take Padme with us. This is no place for the queen or handmaidens, this is going to be awful. I never really picked up on that, like how vile, the vile gangster, the dangerous place this is. Because, for me, Tatooine was like, oh, sweet. I love Tatooine. That's where Luke Skywalker was, But in fresh eyes, I could see where this is really painted as this could be very dangerous. This could be a not a good thing. Yeah. And then later we'll see with the sandstorm and all those kind of things. Jar Jar, he's really nervous, we should be robbed and crunched. And yeah, you're in the alleyway. Yeah. So that's neat. It's a cool way to see this as a hive of scumability, right? Yeah. And the wilderness too, the danger of it. Yeah. Because we all know that in the desert wilderness is where all the like dangerous animals are. The reptiles and the snakes and the scorpions and the spider, Yeah. It's not like you said, it's not a place you go to relax and hang out. Huh. Oh man, what a cool picture. And I just love the hero's journey. I mean, I just think that resonates with us so much as humans. Like we have this choice. We either sit in our high tower and be comfortable, or we go through the trials and actually gain something. We grow, we see victory, we grow in our faith. All of it. But you have to go through that. And who wants to? I mean, nobody wants to, but yeah. But what a beautiful thing it is in the end.
Yeah, when the hero accepts the call to adventure, it's usually out of naivete, or they're usually not aware of how miserable it's going to be. When Frodo says, "Yeah, sure, Gandalf, I'll take the ring," they think, "Oh, just go to Rivendell and that'll be the end of it, right? We'll go home after this." Nope, you're gonna have your finger bitten off and be lying on the side of a volcano about to die. After that's going to be way worse than you think. And so most of us, and I say most of us, when we do, if there is a call to adventure at some point in our lives, we're the ones who refuse it. Usually, where it's like, "Nah, I'm good." Like you said, it's so much easier to stay where we're comfortable, stay in the womb phase of your life, right, and just be like close to what's comfortable, to the things that nourish you, like your parents and your environment. You don't want to go off to the dangerous place, and the desert is a place of testing and chaos, or chaos, but it's a place of like testing in a lot of stories, in mythology, where it's again, it's the dangerous spot. It's a trend. It's a threshold crossing in a lot of stories as well, where this is where Padme will learn. This is where Padme will grow. She will learn about the potential in this little boy that she doesn't really is insignificant to her. It's like, yeah, whatever, this kid can't help us, and eventually she learns. And then Qui-Gon will learn about Anakin as well. And Anakin proves himself in this desert. He goes through his own little trial and test to prove himself there. So it is this dangerous place, but that, again, it's necessary to go there, even though it is this, no one would. I love the first shot. It's just a great contrast. You see this shiny, beautiful ship landing in the desert. It's like this shining jewel in this desert. Like this ship does not belong here, right? It's so. And Qui-Gon's right. Like they would attract a lot of attention, right? He says, let's land on the outskirts, because it's like taking this really, really nice, super high-end, shiny, like you just cleaned it, like sports car, beautiful, like luxury car, into like just the worst part of town. And it's like, why would you? No, someone's gonna steal the rims off of that thing. It's like someone's gonna. You don't want to. It's just like that. That's this kind of sense you get where, and you're right. As growing up, we look at Tatooine. We were so used to it that we're just like, oh, that's where Anakin is. That's where Luke is. That's where pod racing is. It's such a cool place. Like, no, but it's in this movie, you get the same introduction to it that people got in A New Hope when it first came out, which is this very hostile environment. And it's not fun for the characters in the story to be there. No one wants to stay in Tatooine. Everyone wants to leave. But you need to be there. No one wants to stay in the desert. No one wants to stay in the murky underwater world, but you need to stay there to be tested.
What a great observation. I mean, how biblical is that, right? Christ going in the wilderness to
exactly, totally
be tested. Yeah. But you see that all over the place. I mean, how many times do you see that in history even? The desert, the wilderness has always been a place of testing. And because it just strips you of everything.
Yeah. You have to rely on, there's so few things to rely on. You have to rely on God, the Force, the people you're with. Like you have to, it really tests you. You have to, all the luxuries, all the things that could be helpful seem to have been taken away from you. And so you have to figure out how you really have to reevaluate where you're at and go, okay, how am I going to get out of this? What do I need to survive here? What do I actually need? What are the things I need to rely on? And the desert forces you into that.
Yeah. And how cool is it to see Padme's character growth already in this one little scene based on that? She's saying, okay, I'm going to go. I'm going to do this. It's time for me to step into the test, get my hands dirty. So we just saw her cleaning R2, yeah. And like you said, even contrasted from a few scenes ago where she was hiding, she was, letting Sabe take all the credit. If anyone's going to be killed, it's going to be Sabe. Now it's like, nope. Okay, I'm going through the desert. I'm going with you. I'm cleaning R2. It's time. It's time. You see her character start to shine through a little bit. It's time for me to step out of my nice, comfy ship and go down into the depths of this seedy back alley town. And it's also neat too. It's just my love for Qui-Gon. He's just saying, no, you can't do that. Like he's trying to protect her, right? He might be a little annoyed too. I don't know, but there is a sense of like, no, this is not going to be a nice place to go visit. And then it's really neat looking how Panaka and Padme kind of just exchange glances of each other here when he's trying to convince Qui-Gon no. You can see their unspoken language happening there. Where Padme's pushing this, and Panaka's like, well, I wasn't expecting him to resist. So Her Highness commands you to take her handmaiden with you. Like she is coming whether you like this or not. And it's just a neat thing. I like that.
Yeah, I like that. I do like this scene where they all disembark. 'Cause it's really interesting who goes with Qui-Gon, into the city. Because who do we take? We take Jar Jar. It's those three people we had that scene with, right? It's like it's Qui-Gon and the underappreciated ones, the ones that people think little of, the underdogs, right? We get Jar Jar. Everyone on board was probably very eager to get him off the ship, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's like, okay, we finally landed. We can't just shoot, jettison him off into space. We can get him off the ship now. Please get him off the ship, And he won't attract nearly as much attention as like a Royal Naboo guard would, right? So Jar Jar makes a lot of sense to go with, with Qui-Gon on this little journey. And R2 comes along and he has a readout of the parts that the ship needs, right? That he's shows to Watto, and plus when you need to find parts for a broken down ship, you probably want to take a mechanic with you, right? And so so R2 goes along, and then Padme, she's the last minute addition. She's the last second she goes. She was one that Qui-Gon wasn't really planning on, but we're still, as an audience, we're still not quite sure about her yet. We don't really know. It's like, why is she being singled out among the other handmaid? What's so special about her? Why is she significant yet? We don't know as an audience yet. We've only had one like small scene to get to know her, but we know that she's naive to this rough and dangerous planet. Like, as you said, Qui-Gon kind of brings it up. He says, "This is gonna be not fun." So I don't know if I want you tagging along with us. He doesn't like that idea, but and also he knows like they might have to do some things that she wouldn't approve of, and she might try to get in the way. And of course, this does happen, right? And he wants to avoid that. And he's like, I know you're the queen. You're not going to approve of the stuff I'm going to do, but you got to trust my judgment. No more command. And he now he can say it more blatantly, like no more commands from the Highness, even though there's this handmaiden in front of him who's really the queen. He's now has an excuse to say, just leave me alone. Let me do my job, and we'll get out of here as quickly as possible. But now obviously Padme is the queen, and she's curious about the planet, right? So she's taking responsibility to go to this dangerous place, but she still doesn't quite know. She's 14 or something like that. She's been queen for very, very little amount of time, and she's probably never been off Naboo. So it's like, she's still naive and she's curious, and it's kind of that what we were talking about earlier with the hero's journey, where the hero accepts the call to adventure, sort of out of not knowing exactly what is in store. So she's curious, but she doesn't realize probably how rough it's going to be. And clearly she's surprised by, she sees slavery for the first time. That throws her off. She's like, she totally isn't unprepared. But yet she still has that adventurous spirit. She's still, a young kid who wants to get out there and see the world, or see the universe in this case. So, but she's really cool. It's a strange world that she's stepping into, and here's where she's in the desert now. She will be transformed and tested and turned into the leader that she needs to become.
Stepping out of the garden.
Totally.
Yeah. So, question for you, kind of followed up. You hinted at this a few times. Do you think Qui-Gon knows she's the queen?
Oh yeah,
really?
He definitely knows. Yeah,
wow,
I mean, there's a lot of hints at it. I mean, and George has said that he knows. I think I'm not just making that up. I know for sure George has said that he knows. He and Obi-Wan both know that she's the queen the whole time. Yeah, and so he has fun because that's why he picks on her a lot throughout Tatooine. Like he always kind of like, the queen trusts my judgment. Like the only reason he would say that is if he knows. Like he's not just being a jerk because he's a jerk. He's a good person, but he's trying to teach her as well. She serves as his apprentice for a little bit. She apprentices under Qui-Gon for this whole time they're in Tatooine here, and she learns from him, to later appreciate Anakin. Right? She learns from his appreciation of Jar Jar and Anakin. That she learns from Qui-Gon, just as much as Anakin does, I would say. So he for sure knows that she's.
That's so cool. I never knew that. Did he say that like in a commentary or something, or I've never heard George say that.
It was in I think it was in one of those archive books.
Wow.
Where he says that he knows, but you can kind of, if you look in the movie, it's not like something, because there's a lot of stuff that you would only know because George says it. But I think as a fan, I just always assumed, because I was a kid, I didn't know that she was the queen until later on. I just assumed that he didn't know, but Qui-Gon's a lot smarter. And if you watch the movie, there's a lot of hints, a lot of subtle little clues that he and Obi-Wan both know who she is.
Oh man, never would have caught that, because of the look that they give each other at the end when she finally reveals that she is the queen. They kind of look at each other, and I didn't know if that was. I always interpret that as like, how did we miss that? But I guess not. Wow.
Well, you see Anakin's reaction. He's like, huh? And Jar Jar goes, huh? Yeah. And then the Jedi look at each other and go, They kind of have Obi-Wan has a bit of a smile, and Qui-Gon kind of goes, okay, so see, look, I'm proud of her. Look what she's doing. She's taking responsibility. She's learning. That's kind of what that look is, I think. So
wow, that changes a lot for me. I'm gonna have to watch for those moments now. That's so cool.
I'll try and touch on him as we get there, because once I found that out too, I was like, oh, he totally knows, and I started picking up on these little clues here and there. That's why he throws that line, "The queen trusts my judgment," back at her, right? Because he knows she's the queen. And she's like, and And she says later on, she says, you know, the queen would not approve. He says the queen doesn't need to know. And she says, well, I don't approve, you know. And so that's one of our first hints as an audience that she is the queen. She's like, well, the queen doesn't approve actually because I don't approve, you know. So there's this fun little back and forth between the two of them. They're at odds a lot, and Qui-Gon kind of entertains it because he knows that she's the queen. He's not just picking on this poor handmaiden, you know. You know, like he knows she's not just Jar Jar or R2. He knows she's special. He knows that she has the authority, and so he is a little harder on her. He knows that she has that burden of leadership that she needs to be. You know, he wants her to be prepared to help save her people. That's his job, and that's what he's trying to do. And one of the best ways he can do that is not just, you know, take out his lightsaber and fight for them. It's to, you know, train her leader. Qui-Gon just trains everybody in this movie. He's teaching everybody. It's so cool.
It is cool.
Obi-Wan, Anakin, Padme, Jar Jar, everybody. Yeah, it's so cool. He's just the teacher. I remember I said that he's the guru, right? The one that he doesn't just teach you and leave and like you forget. You need to embody who he is. You need to start living your life the way he lives his, and that's the best way you can learn from him.
Yeah, Dave Filoni gave that really awesome speech. I don't know if you remember that or if you've seen that. He did it during one of the Mandalorian Disney galleries ones. Yeah, where he talks about Qui-Gon as like this father, and everything hinges on him. And he kind of explains the duel of fates, you know, and explains that whole name of that, like what happens if Qui-Gon lives, what happens if he doesn't, and how much that impacts Anakin. And I've always known that, and I just thought it was a really beautiful thing. How Qui-Gon's this dad that Anakin never had, even in this short little time. But something you said just brought a new light to that, is that he's kind of playing that role for Padme too, or he's sort of this father figure to her now. And knowing that she's the queen makes that even stronger because he's intentionally taken her on now. Like, okay, I know you're the queen. I'm going to, you know, stay close to me. Like, yes, there's a protective thing. There's definitely that, but there's also a really neat thing, like you said, he's the guru, he's the father of this story. Like, wow, I always kind of knew that with Anakin, but now with Padme too. Wow, that's super sweet. You know, just to see him.
And it's fun to
Skywalkers.
Yeah, well, exactly, and like you see, Qui-Gon gets trickled down through both Anakin and Padme into their kids, right? So like they both learn from him. Obviously, Anakin had a stronger relationship with him, more like intimate relationship with him, and as a kind of father and son thing. But Padme starts becoming a little bit of a Qui-Gon character as well. As you see through Clone Wars, she takes on the cause for the underappreciated, for the overlooked, and she's the voice of reason in the Senate, and she's the one who goes, "Have you ever thought we might be on the wrong side?" She's the one who kind of becomes a bit of a rebel, like Qui-Gon was, and of course that gets passed on to her daughter, who is the leader of the rebels. So yeah, it's fun just to see how, Qui-Gon just is just this little, I don't know, it's weird, but he's like, this is a weird way of saying it, but he's like this kind of disease that infects virus that infects everybody in a good way. He just kind of starts, you know, he plants the little seeds in everyone's mind, and they just start embodying him and the best parts of what he's taught them. So
I've never really thought of him as the father of the Skywalkers before. That's kind of a neat picture. Yeah. And he feels like a dad. You know, I mean, we really look at him from the audience perspective as the father in this story. Yeah, I love that. And I just love that that applies to Padme now too. You know, that Qui-Gon will play such a sweet role in her life, even this brief little time. Yeah. So beautiful. And what better organization or institution to look at than the family, you know, to just show how it works. And yeah, we have this family of misfits, and it's great. It's great.
Yeah, all the misfits are on the journey together. Yeah. They're the ones who will go to Tatooine. They're the ones who go to Mos Espa on this mission. And, you know, the rigid, you know, logical ones, Obi-Wan, Panaka, they all stay on the ship. And the ones who are kind of quirky and weird, they're all the ones who go on the journey here in the desert. Yeah. And then we get to see Mos Espa for the first time. That's the next scene, right? We actually get into the city here. Yeah, what are your thoughts on our first encounter with the world of Tatooine here?
Yeah, I like it. And George said, I believe in the commentary, that he didn't want to go back to Mos Eisley, and he wanted to show that it's much bigger than that as a planet, but also like this is a way bigger city. This is more of one of the more popular ones, and I like Qui-Gon's introduction to the city. Moisture farmers, these spaceports are havens for those who don't wish to be found. Like he's setting the stage still, like what we talked about. This isn't a good place. It's kind of a mess. And I really like, of course, John Williams. He's a genius too, but he just plays this so well. Where it's kind of like you're excited. Here's a new place, but it's eerie too. You're not quite sure what to think of it. And he nails that obviously through the dialogue here with George, but John Williams I think really nails that with the score, because you get these like ups and downs. Like, should I be excited we're here or should I be nervous we're here? And he kind of plays on that, and then Padme's serious tone, like us, and I really like it. And of course, I love all the background stuff, all the speeder bikes and just the activity and the aliens and. I don't mind Jar Jar stepping in the poo either.
I know, right? Yeah.
But he says too, like, this is going to be very, very bad, and then just steps in it. It's great.
Yeah. It's interesting.
How about you?
Well, we'll start off on start on a high note. We'll start with what you said about Jar Jar stepping in the goo. In the poop. I think in the script actually it says he steps in ooze or goo or something. It doesn't specify that it's poop actually. Which I always assumed it was. But I guess I think it's like, maybe it is. Or I think you see little different bits and you see different, there's more of it if you look at that shot, there's more of, whatever he steps in, there's more of it along the road there. So maybe it is poop. But I think in the script originally it was ooze or something. So I was like, oh, maybe it doesn't step in poop. But,
oh yeah, you're right.
Whatever, it gets the point.
Subtitle says goo. I always thought you said poo.
Yeah, I guess
it says goo.
He says icky goo, I guess. So maybe we should take him at his word, I guess.
There you go.
Yeah, that's okay. We get a fart joke later, so there is
that's right.
Scatological humor, or is that the right word? Anyway,
my kids love that line. They say it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway,
I always said
derail.
Pizza. I used to say that as a kid all the time. Whenever some stunk, I always did that. But but with this scene, it's our first look at what we saw Theed, and that's our first city we saw on the garden, beautiful paradise planet. Now we get Mos Espa. And it's the opposite, right? There's no design, there's no art to be found here. Everything is utilitarian and practical, and nothing's shiny. Everything's rusty, and there's junk everywhere. And we don't like this place. We've never seen Star Wars before, so we're not happy to see Tatooine at this point, right? This is new.
Good call.
It's like, ugh, let's go back to the garden spot. This is gross. Everything's nasty here. And it's appropriate, right? Because like I said, the desert it's the opposite of the garden. Desert symbolizes the absence of fertility and vitality and abundance. There's nothing grows in the desert. Nothing. Well, that's the irony. The characters grow where nothing grows in the desert, right? So
that's a neat picture.
And also you see that there's so many different species on this planet, right? It's no one's home. Like everyone who is on Tatooine isn't there on purpose. There's so many different aliens and creatures. There's not like and we don't really get to see an indigenous population until we see the Tusken Raiders and the Jawas. But right now it's just eclectic. Everyone is stuck here. No one really wants to be here. Whether they're slaves or pirates, or they're on the run, they're hiding from something. And it's interesting that I think that we never actually get this kind of big. Remember that first shot of Theed was that huge, beautiful with the waterfalls, and we get that beautiful vista of the city and the cliffs and the palace. We never really get a big wide shot of that for Mos Espa of the city. Like nothing nothing in the cinematography makes it feel grand, like the sweeping vista shots in Naboo. It still feels big, but it's more like a claustrophobic kind of big, like imposing sort of feel. We never get this like huge sense like, the cinematography never gives you like a shot where you feel like, oh, I see the boundaries of Mos Espa. I can understand it. It's there. I see the whole thing. You're kind of the whole time you're kind of trapped inside the city. So it's sort of this. It's a little more claustrophobic. Not a lot. It's still not. It's still, open in the desert, but it's not. You don't get these beauty shots of it like you get with Theed. So visually, we're kind of showing that this is not something that is entirely peaceful and tranquil and tameable. Like you never quite see the edges of you never quite know what's around the corner. And it's not the most scary place. It's broad daylight. It's not nighttime. We're not in a dark alley, but it's still not. It's just still not comfortable. It's that again, that chaotic potential. Like this could be bad. It's not obviously horrible yet, but it could. There's a lot of things could go wrong probably. And it's interesting. I remember being thrown off the first time I saw Mos Espa in, I think it was Boba Fett, the book of Boba Fett.
Oh yeah.
Where I was like, oh, this looks very different than I pictured it.
Yeah, me too.
Because we never saw you look at the concept art for episode 1 and you see those cliffs, you see that the way it looks in Mandalorian. But we never got that. We never got the white shot. That's the first time we saw it was in Boba Fett. And I was like, oh, so that's what it looks like. Because it's in the concept art for episode 1 that the way that Mos Espa looks with that kind of tower in the middle and those big cliffs.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
But we never really get to see it until Mandalorian. I thought it was interesting because at first I was like, "What? They changed it." Of course, I had to check myself. I'm like, "Wait a second, did they change it?" I went back to the concept art. I'm like, "No, they didn't change it. They just it's the first time I've ever seen a wide shot of the city." So we don't get an episode 2 either.
Yeah, you never see it. Yeah, you just get those really up close shots. Yeah, that's such a neat picture or contrast, though, like you said, between this and Naboo, because it's almost played up. I was thinking back while you were explaining it there. It's like, wow, it almost feels like Naboo is played up like a tourist spot. You could almost see those shots to be like, here's the, like those commercials that they want you to come visit.
Yeah.
Here's the next, you could sit on the beaches of the Naboo, rivers in town, or come view the architecture. But you don't get that at all with Tatooine. It's just, you're right in the midst of it, and it's chaotic and dry and weird. Yeah, weird animals and stuff, weird aliens. Because that's a good point too. We haven't really been introduced to too many aliens to this point. We've seen the Nemoidians and the Gungans. But you kind of get the sense that they're just part of the people, I suppose. Like on Naboo, it just feels like there's 2 people groups. You have the people, the actual humans, and then you have the Gungans. And here it's just everything, just one big melting pot. Yeah. So that's a really cool observation I never picked up on before. So pretty much everything you say, I've never picked up on before. It's awesome.
Well, again, this is me just like actually looking back at the movies and looking for this stuff because I like forcing myself to look at things I never saw before. So, I'm not smart enough to be like, oh, this is how I've always known that Star Wars was this. No, I had to like do a lot of rethinking, going, okay, I'm an idiot. Think of try and figure out what Star Wars actually is instead of what I want it to be, or what I always thought it was, and listen to George and listen to the commentaries, read the books and the making ofs and try to forget stuff and figure out, okay, what is my first introduction to this character, to this planet? What is that? How does that affect? How does that change what I see? Because that's of course how he's thinking. And that's why he's a storyteller and I'm not, right? Because as a fan, I'm like, oh, look, like, oh, Tatooine, yay! It's like, no, that's the wrong vibe, dude. You don't want to be happy when you see Tatooine. No one's happy to see Tatooine. Anyway, but it's even the lighting. Going back to what you were saying about the contrast between like the tourist spot and this kind of, like, I don't know, used car lot, like junk, like on the edge of town kind of vibe we get with Tatooine. It's like even the lighting in the cinematography, like the lighting is very soft, very flattering, very beautiful. In Naboo, and then here it's very, very harsh outdoor direct sunlight. And
the sun doing harder to meet his skin.
Exactly. So, exactly. I tell you, it's filmed to look like it looks hot. It looks unpleasant.
You feel it.
Naboo, when you look at Naboo, you can feel the shade. When you look at Tatooine, you can feel the sunburn coming on. Right. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was actually thinking that as you like a couple of scenes ago. I was like, wow, you just kind of warm up watching it. Like I was thinking, man, Qui-Gon just looks so warm in all those clothes.
That huge poncho. Yeah.
Yeah, Jar Jar. This is the sun on his skin. Everything's harsh and wrinkly and clay. That you get the sense that you're really sitting in the middle of an African desert. And there's junk everywhere. There's people everywhere. It's reminds me of those marketplaces that you see like in Aladdin and stuff, and everyone's bartering and there's stuff hanging all over the place. Yeah.
Oh yeah, so there's a lot of inspiration of that kind of Middle Eastern, like bazaar sort of marketplace stuff. You see that a lot in Mos Espa and Mos Eisley, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and you go to when you think about Naboo, you think about like feeling the mist in the air from the rivers and the waterfalls. The
Yeah.
shade, the green plants, the smells. In here, you're stepping in goo.
Yeah. Well, there was
It's on the
life on
street.
Naboo, right? We saw birds flying through the air and creatures, and then there's just like desert. The desert, there's just nothing, and then you have, I guess you have some dewbacks and stuff, but then you have nothing pleasant, nothing fun to look at, and then you get to this little hive of scum and villain. I guess it's not that's Mos Eisley, not Mos Eisley, but similar thing where it's just a bunch of weird looking aliens that are just like these people all look like they have guns and want to hurt me, kind of thing. So
yeah, I like that contrast. Did George was he really inspired by like Wild West stuff for Tatooine in particular? I mean, I know he has a lot of Wild West things in Star Wars, but do you know if that was a big player for Tatooine specifically?
Yeah, Lucas was a huge fan of is a huge fan of the filmmaker John Ford, who made a lot of those great westerns with John Wayne. Those sweeping vistas with his shots were amazing because there's these huge wide shots of this beautiful like Monument Valley. Ornament Valley. That's Cars, as in Hood Ornament Valley. Ooh, nice. There we go. That was weird. My Cars obsession as a kid was showing. Sorry, Monument Valley. And these. Yeah, he was. I love the John Ford movies too. He's a great visual storyteller. The Searchers was a big. The Searchers actually will play a lot into episode 2. That's a great movie. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but
no.
There's a lot of visual homages to the Searchers and just story homages as well in episode 2, particularly the Tatooine stuff. So John Ford was a huge influence on Lucas, but also Sergio Leone, who made the spaghetti westerns, the westerns that were filmed in Italy and Spain, which is why they're called spaghetti, because they weren't actually filmed in America. But they the stories took place in America, but they were just cheaper to, I guess, it was cheaper to film them over there.
I was wondering why they're called that.
Yeah, for a long time, like, why the heck is it called spaghetti westerns? There's no, because a lot of the actors were, European, but they were dubbed over by Americans. And anyway, wow. But movies like the Dollars trilogy, which is the Clint Eastwood, like The Man with No Name movies, Fistful of Dollars, Few Dollars More, and The Good and the Bad, the Ugly. 3 very, very interesting movies. But like you get characters like Cad Bane are very much inspired by the actor Lee Van Cleef, who was in 2 of those movies. But they kind of like bounty hunter, I guess in those movies they were called bounty killers. The cowboy hat, like the kind of just the way they hold themselves, even just like the look of like the poncho, right? Like Jango Fett and Boba Fett had like that poncho look in episode 2, and I mean you see it in Qui-Gon here, and you see it on Luke, but in episode 4. But yeah, a lot of the visual ideas like big deserts and dusty towns where there's unsavory characters lurking, that a lot of that comes, at least obviously that's an old idea, but the way it's presented and the way that it's kind of become an icon, a lot of that was started with those spaghetti westerns and those old John Ford films too. So yeah, Lucas was for sure inspired by a lot of westerns for Star Wars. Like the character of Han Solo is like straight out of he's like totally a character from a western. Put a cowboy hat on him and he looks almost, his costume he wears a vest and boots, and he's got a gun on his hip, the holster. He's like 90% a cowboy. You just need to put a hat on him. But then he'd be Indiana Jones, so we don't do that. But, yeah.
Oh, that's cool. You could definitely feel the Western influences on Star Wars. And to me, it always felt like Tatooine was just a really good picture of that. The Wild Wild West kind of thing. But I was just never quite sure where that really played in. Definitely. I mean, you could feel that with Cad Bane and some of those bounty hunter scum people. Yeah, that's really neat. Thanks for answering that.
So yeah, long-winded answer, but there you go.
No, that was really cool. I love being able to see that. So then is this the first time we are introduced to a foreign language in Star Wars? With Watto here?
Ooh,
have we heard it before?
I think I want to say you're right. I guess unless you the Gungans have a weird way of talking, but it's not different words. It's the first time of getting Huttese, I think. Is this this scene? I think you're right, because the first time we definitely get subtitles, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, now I'm like, there's gotta maybe there's one little thing that's kind of, is there a droid speak that I guess R2 kind of counts.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose.
But we get was it base or not basic? What's it called? That the droids speak. It has a name for it. Anyway.
Oh, does it really? I never knew that.
Yeah, there's like
cool.
it's like binary. No, I can't remember what it's called. Anyway,
basic
is what the humans speak, whatever. Oh, is that right? Maybe there's something like that.
Bocce?
Anyway,
is it bocce?
Yeah,
they speak bocce.
Yeah, that's what the Tatooine droids speak or something. I don't know. Anyway, I think you're right. Yeah, that's a good point. This is like it's a good point because that does add to, again, the kind of exotic, eclectic. We're not in Kansas anymore, feeling like, or we're someplace else now. Where people are speaking different languages. Yeah,
very foreign. I don't think we've had subtitles yet in this movie.
Yeah, I think you're right.
If I'm not mistaken, though. But yeah, and Watto, I love Watto. I've always loved Watto. I just think he's just a great character. I really enjoyed the voice. I enjoy his look. Yeah, I don't know why he's always just resonated with me. Like, I always just thought he was a cool character. I really couldn't tell you why. He's not scary, like, at least to me, he never was. I never look at him and go, ooh, that guy's freaky. But he's got to get this sense of, here's this bum, he's got the whiskers on his chin, and he flies around like a little fly, like kind of annoying, but almost that kind of that used car salesman kind of almost. I mean, it's different from the Nemoidians. They felt slimy. Watto doesn't feel slimy. He just feels like that rough and gruff, shop dealer who's just out to make a buck.
Yeah, he's not like trying to pass himself off as something he's not. He's kind of a jerk and corrupt, and he's not really hiding it. He's like, all I want is money. He's like, the only thing that works on me is money. He's not trying to like, we would never do anything without the approval of the Senate. That's not his. And Tatooine, there's no need to try and be nice because no one's nice on Tatooine. So he's like, we're all jerks here. I'm a jerk too. Give me money. I'll give you your parts, kind of thing. Yeah, and it's true. I liked Watto as a kid too, and his role as a slave owner is very, very downplayed, and like the whole slavery aspect of it is very, very downplayed for obvious reasons, because it's a kid's film. You don't want to get too brutal too quickly, or at all in this movie. But there's little hints of it here and there, and so I do see him very differently now as it is a kid, because I didn't really understand what slavery was, or what our own history of that is. So I was kind of unaware of that as a kid. So I just looked at him as a character, and I didn't really understand that he was even really an obstacle in Anakin's way of getting out. Because as a kid, I didn't even understand half the dialogue. Which is a good thing, because it's why I still like the movies, because the dialogue's not the most important thing to tell the story with that George is using. But I always liked just his design was always fun, and I liked his such a character. Yeah, his voice, the way he moves, the way he's got these wings. He's always floating with the wings. He never really. I don't think he ever touches the ground in the movie. Maybe he sits down. I think in the pod race he might still be floating. I'm not sure. But anyway,
he was just sitting down here, but. Yeah. Oh,
was he? Oh, that's right.
We meet him.
You have the movie in front of you. Yeah, that's right. You have the movie in front of you. I forgot.
But it's super quick.
But yeah, most 90% of the time he's just like floating, flapping there. It's like, wow. Yeah, I guess it'd be weird to see him walk on those legs. No one wants to see that. That'd be weird. But yeah. But yeah, there's. I guess I do have some notes here on him. What did I write? Oh, yeah. So, he's interesting because you're right. There is a similarity between him and the Trade Federation. They're both greedy. They're both oppressive. But he's differently. He's not quite as not as slimy. And it's interesting. I forgot about this. I'm glad I wrote this down. His design was originally created with the Trade Federation in mind. So when they were designing I think Doug Chang's like first drawing of his face is like the notes says Trade Baron underneath it. So the idea was that would maybe possibly what the Trade Federation could look like. Because he doesn't particularly have like a kind face, but he's not totally horrific looking either. And it's appropriate because like I said, he is a slave owner. He's a slave owner, so obviously that sucks. And there's a line in the script actually that was cut in the movie where Anakin says that Watto is a kinder master than Gardillo the Hutt was. So it's not like he's the only it's not like he's the only slave master and he's doing it because he's sadistic. It's just kind of part of the culture there, right?
It's
Like
the culture, yeah.
Padme finds out, it's like, oh, this is actually normal for everybody there, which is the sad part. Yeah, he's just playing a normal part in this society, this corrupt society around him. And on this planet, the society is built on slavery and run by gangsters who rule with fear. So it's not so much like there's a single villain in Anakin's life right now who's keeping him down. It's more just the society around him, which is oppressing him. You know, like he's just, the whole world seems to be against him living his dreams at this point. And that we see that personified in characters like Watto and Sebulba. They're manifestations of the oppressive society around him. And talk about father figures, like he's the dominant male figure in Anakin's life right now, and he's keeping him down. And so it's he represents the archetypal tyrannical father as opposed to the good father that Qui-Gon represents, and that tyrannical aspect of the father. Since Anakin doesn't have this actual father figure, that kind of, you get these aspects, like Palpatine will fill that kind of tyrannical father aspect of it, where it's just this, he's in control of him, he's subservient to him, but he's not loving good father. So the oppressive tyrannical aspect of society is represented as male in many mythologies. Like so actually you get a lot of times the society is represented as a bad male, bad guy. But that's the tyrant is only one aspect of the father archetype, like I said, and the other one is what Qui-Gon embodies. He's benevolent, he's wise. He pushes those who have been underestimated to become more than what they are. And he's the wise king, you know, the positive aspect of society. So there's two aspects. Society can be the thing that's keeping you from, you know, can be oppressing you and causing problems, or it can be the thing that facilitates your growth. So these two, and we see these two father-like figures clash over Anakin, right? There's this kind of contest between the two to see who's going to determine his fate. And so we'll see. Yeah. So it's sort of like it's kind of like Hagrid and Mr. Dursley in the beginning of Harry Potter. I don't know how familiar you are with Harry Potter, but you see this.
Not as much.
Yeah, there's this. It's an old idea. You kind of have like two competing father figures in stories a lot, kind of deciding the fate of the kid. But anyway.
Yeah, you really feel that. Yeah, I'm glad you brought all that up, because I've thought about that long and hard as you think about Anakin's journey and just this whole concept of slavery. I've always thought this plays a very significant role into his willingness to basically be Palpatine's slave. Because I mean, he's just so open to it, you know, and it just shows how quick Anakin is to serve. I mean, I think part of that's just his character, but I think part of it's his upbringing as a slave. And there's that really awesome arc in Clone Wars where they explore that, where Anakin has to deal with slavery again. And the slave owner actually calls him out and says, well, you're just a slave to the Jedi, you know? And he's like, oh yeah. But it's just so interesting that Anakin's worldview is kind of like, well, everybody has a master. So I'm just going to go with whoever is mine, you know, like he's so willing to give up himself to serve and to do what he thinks is the right thing to do, whether that's Qui-Gon or Padme or the Jedi or eventually even the Sith. You know, I mean, I've just always thought that was a big role, and we see that right here introduced. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? I don't know if we want to talk about that now or not, but because I mean, I feel like slavery plays such a huge part of Anakin's life, not just here, but like in his whole story arc. So do you have any thoughts on that, or as we introduce kind of slavery here and Anakin and
yeah, it's the kind of, there's a sad irony with Anakin, which is that he hates the idea of being a slave. He hates slavery. He wants, obviously his dream is to come back and free all the slaves, right? He doesn't react well when people call him a slave or put him in that position, but he voluntarily, without, almost unwittingly puts himself in situations where he does become a slave. Like that's the sad irony of Vader's or Anakin's story, is that he becomes a slave. While trying to become the master, he ends up making himself a slave. He wants to become ruler, master of the universe, make things the way he wants them to be, you know, control everything. And actually the pursuit of mastery of everything sets you up actually for becoming a slave. So it's tragic. It's sad that his life starts in such a horribly low place, and he is set on this path by Qui-Gon and by the Jedi, by Padme, to for success. Like he could be so much more. He reaches such heights from where he started, right? Um, Revenge of the Sith and Clone Wars, like he's the best he has ever been. He's the greatest of the Jedi at that point. He's like nothing could go wrong. He's like he's teed up for so much success, and yet he unknowingly, willingly sacrifices all that to become a slave again, and he doesn't realize it till too late. But and he justifies like, well, I'm still, he's still trying to hold on to whatever power he has in his mind. He's still a master. He's still, um, what does he say to Obi-Wan episode 4? Like, when I left you as with a learner, now I am the master. It's like, from whose perspective, like you are a miserable, pathetic figure at this point. You're terrified of Palpatine. Palpatine, you totally subservient to him. You have like no authority, like, and yeah, you're a shell. You're basically a robot with a bit of humanity to you. But in his mind, he's like, I have power and I'm going to hold on to it. And eventually he has to realize like, oh, actually I have no power. I'm actually a slave. That's what Luke helps him to realize, is that you're actually totally deluded right now. You're totally wrong. And you are a slave. And if you want to be free, he offers freedom to him. And eventually it's up to Vader, or I guess Anakin, to take that. But yeah, Vader, we see Vader often as this symbol of power and strength and like terror. It's evil power, and that's what's kind of offered to Anakin, is this Vader is this, become my apprentice. I'll give you access to power. But actually, Vader it might as well be a synonym for slave, unfortunately for him, and he just doesn't see that. But in terms of how it's kind of introduced here, like we don't know when we first see. Like, we can talk about the introduction of our main character. Might as well talk about it here. We don't know he's a slave yet. When we first meet him, but when he does come in, I didn't see this for the longest time. When he comes in, Watto like raises his hand and Anakin flinches, as if Watto's gonna hit him, slap him. And it's super subtle, but it's there.
Okay, I have to go back and watch that.
And it implies, it implies something we don't actually see in this kids film, right? So again, there's a lot of stuff. Like the slavery thing is kind of not really shown, and even though Watto is, he's talked about as being a kinder master, it's still, slavery is still not a great thing. Obviously, it's still awful. Watto is not the father figure that Anakin needs, that anyone needs. A slave master is not anything anyone needs in their life. So I just, little things like that, little moments like that. I remember reading that in the script. It says like Watto raises his hand and Anakin flinches, and I go, that doesn't, what? I don't remember that happening. And then I watched it and I'm like, oh, it is there. It's just very subtle.
It is.
Very quick.
I just saw that. Wow.
Right?
I've never noticed that.
And I think it's kind of intentional. You don't really notice that unless you're looking for it. Like that's a big, adult thing to discuss and talk about. And so the movie doesn't talk about it too much. We just know that slavery is bad. Watto's in Anakin's way. You get that sense as a kid. Even though I said earlier that I didn't realize that, but I knew that Watto wasn't like awesome. I knew that he was in Anakin's way, I guess, but I didn't understand to what extent that was. But anyway, but just this, that's our first little taste of what Anakin's role is in this world. Is that little, he walks in, Watto yells, I almost said Yato wells at him. Watto yells at him. He runs in and he's like, hey, what does he say there? I can't remember. You have the movie in front of you. What does Watto say? He's like, where have you been, or something? Anakin's like, I was cleaning doing what you told me to. It's like all of a sudden with the dialogue and through this action, we see, oh, this kid is either maybe working for this guy, but more likely he's a slave. And that's kind of our first taste of that.
Yeah, good point. I never even caught that too, because he says, boy, get in here. What took you so long? And it's only like a split second, unless of course he's waiting. I don't know. Yeah, but wow. And then, I was cleaning what's the line there? I was cleaning the ceiling, the fan switches. Wow. I never caught that. It just shows you, again, kind of the genius of George to show this intense theme of slavery, but for the kid, I mean, you're not necessarily picking up on it. You get it's not great, but like you just pointed out, it is there. There are signs of that. Like you do see the master and the slave relationship, which I had never picked up on before.
Yeah, I just got that from reading the script. Again, reading the screenplay, reading the script, you just see things, you're like, what? That's in the movie? Or like you see something like, oh, that must have been cut, because I know that line of dialogue isn't in the movie, but you see like the description of the action, you go, wait, what? And I watched the movie, I'm like, oh, it's totally there.
It's
and
totally there.
and it's
Wow.
something. It also kind of speaks to the filmmaking style that George chose, which is it's a little bit documentary like. It's you don't get a close up to show you every single moment that's important. You kind of the camera sometimes takes a step back and just shows you the whole scene, and everything kind of just plays out almost like a stage play. Like, and you don't really get the camera isn't obviously showing you look at this now, look at this, and this is important now. This thing's important. You kind of everything's sort of happening, and the camera is sort of the audience kind of just taking it all in at the same time, and you can kind of choose what to look at. And that's a very kind of documentary thing where you don't know what's going to happen next. So you don't know to go cut in for a close up for the Watto raising his hand to get Anakin. So it serves as a, it's not highlighted because it doesn't need to be. It's supposed to be kind of a subtle thing that George doesn't want to hit that note of the oppression of slavery too hard for his younger audience. But also it fits within the visual style he's chosen, which is not the most overly artistic, like really really like crazy camera setups and mood. Like, oh, here's we don't get this like insert shot of the Watto's hand, just that, and then Anakin's flinching. It's not put in a close up. So that's just a little thing, a small thing. It's just that part of his visual style as well.
Yeah. How neat is that? Yeah. And you really get the sense of kind of along those lines as you're pointing that out. You really see the two sides of Watto. He's not necessarily hiding anything, but you can tell like when the customers walk in, he's like, "Oh, hey, how can I help you?" And then when Anakin comes in, he's like, "Get in here, boy!" And he's just you see his anger a little bit more, that impatience. What took you so long? Get over here, watch the desk. And then I never caught this before, but his next line is after yelling at Anakin, "So let me take thee out back."
Exactly. Yep.
And
and he switches languages, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's true too. And I never caught he actually says thee. Let me take thee out back.
Take thee out back, yeah.
And it's like, wow. I mean, so it's just this, he's a salesman, it's just this idea of like, here's my true colors with this kid. Like, you stupid kid. And now he's like, oh, there's the business guy. Let me sell you something.
Yeah. It reminds me of Stromboli in Pinocchio. I don't know if you remember. But
boy, that's been a while.
Yeah. He, is this, he's this great showman. Like he's very like, hey, well, here's my puppet show. He's to the audience. He's putting on a show. He's he's all smiles. He's this big, lovable seemingly guy. But then as soon as Pinocchio like starts goofing around or messing up, he gets super upset. He starts like gets red and he's about to like lose it. And then he realizes the audience is laughing and they're enjoying. He's like, oh, never mind, we're good. And then when he's counting his money later on, he's just like this monster, like this horrible person at Pinocchio, but he pretends to be kind of nice. Like, here, Pinocchio, he gives him like a fake, he's counting his money and someone gives him like a fake coin or a fake piece of metal. It's like, this, cheap guy, tried to scam me. And he's like, he's got tons of gold, but he's fixated on this tiny little like, fake one he got. And he's like, oh, he gets all angry. But then he's like, he puts on a smile and goes, here, Pinocchio, here's my reward for you. Like, yeah, here, you can have it. And Pinocchio doesn't know any better. He's like, oh, thank you. He's pretending to be this benevolent, kind person, but he's really this monster. And so you can see a little bit of that here with Watto too, where when he switches to Huttese, which he knows he sees a Gungan, a human, two humans and a droid. He's like, I'm gonna switch to a different language and say all my mean stuff to this kid here, and then I'll switch back to English. Hey, now I'm friendly, and later on, once they leave, he says to Anakin, he says, like outlanders, they think we know nothing. He like talks behind their back in Huttese also. So he's a shifty, unreliable, bad guy all around. But you see that in that scene for sure. That's a good thing to pick up on. I never noticed that. I never caught that before. That it was, his attitude changes when he's talking to Anakin, and the language changes and all that. That's a good good observation there.
I never picked up on that either. I was watching the subtitles, like, wow, I never caught that. Yeah, and it's so interesting to contrast him to the Nemoidians because they're both motivated by greed. But the Trade Federation are just so different. Like you said, they're the hierarchy, they're the position of power, they're the cowards. I don't think Watto's a scaredy cat. You don't get the sense that he's a coward, He's just, I am who I am, and I'm going to be me, and I'm going to be a jerk to you. Whereas the Nemoidians are smooth-tongued, and it's interesting how you contrast them, even though they're both very similar in a lot of their character desires, I guess. Both really just want money. Watto doesn't care. He doesn't seem to care about the power part. whereas the Neimoidians care more about power. But they're both kind of just rotten. But
Yeah.
just different angles of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just two different sides of a corrupt galaxy, right? Where, yeah, Waddle he wants whatever amount of power he can get here in Tatooine. He's very disconnected from the rest of the universe. While the Trade Federation, their form of greed is, let's take over planet after planet and just conquer the galaxy that way. Yeah, it's true that it's interesting to contrast them because they both represent similar things, similar ideals, similar themes, but it's greed has many faces in Star Wars. For sure. But yeah, let's talk about Anakin because we're finally introduced to our main character, right?
Yeah.
So like Luke in Episode 4, like we don't really meet our main protagonist until like well into the movie. Kind of like I always could Disney cartoons because that's what I grew up with, but kind of like Aurora and Sleeping Beauty, like the main character is like just largely absent from the main action of the story, right? But as Anakin, as he proves himself to be important to the plot, he is featured more and more prominently until he's the main character in this. And by the end of this movie, by the third act, it's clear, you don't think he's going to be the main character when you first meet him. Like, oh, it's just another character, another person we meet, because he just shows up as someone who can help us, help the crew, right? But by the third act, it's clear, oh, he's going to be the main focus. There's something special about him. I mean, even just the next couple scenes, we see he's special, and then eventually we realize, oh, this movie is actually for him. This movie is actually here to focus on his journey. So it's just a cool introduction.
It is a cool introduction, and I love. I know we've talked about this before, but I just love how down to earth George is. Anakin doesn't get this big glorious entrance, even though this whole saga is his story. She's like, he just walks in, he's just called in by the slave master. Watch the desk, like there's nothing grand about it. And I love how it mirrors Luke Skywalker's entrance too. They both end up on Tatooine doing these cruddy jobs, kind of held back from their destiny. They both want more, just in ratty clothes in the hot wilderness, Yeah. And before we get into Anakin, I have to just comment on Jar Jar. I love Jar Jar. I like that little moment where, Qui-Gon, he's been respecting Jar Jar more, but you still get that sense of like, you're still the out of control child. Don't touch anything. I mean, it's just exactly what mom and dad tells you, like when you go into a nice store, don't touch. Keep your hands to yourself. And he sticks his tongue out. I love it. It's just such a jester moment, just the super long tongue. Like it just feels like it's just a nice jester moment. I love it.
Yeah, it's again these two childlike characters are the ones that actually are. Yeah, it's weird. They're the important ones. It's no wonder why this movie wasn't received well by a lot of adults, and it wouldn't have if 20th Century Fox had their druthers, the main characters wouldn't have been these like little kids, right? Because it would have been, because they're. It's not obvious at first that there's any potential in these characters. Jar Jar, character sticking his tongue out, like, or whatever he makes that noise he makes. Like, oh, you're going to be leading the army to victory later on? No, there's no way that makes sense. And same thing with Anakin. So yeah, it's a brilliant choice because it's so unexpected. And of course, at this point, as an audience, we don't expect anything of Jar Jar or Anakin either. And of course, those are the two characters we think the least of are the characters that matter the most in the end of the day. And at the end of the plot, it's like it's such a cool arc, and I like you touch on the humble beginnings of Anakin because all our great hero stories, whether they're from like not all of them, but so many from mythology and religion, right? Like Jesus had a humble beginning. King Arthur started as this little farm boy, basically like Luke, and like Luke, of course, happens to Luke too. So like, the hero starts from like the last place you'd expect. And of course, and it ends up being. They end up being the key to salvation, right? They save the galaxy, they save the world, and it's such a fun storytelling device just to go take the furthest thing you'd expect from where they end up and start there, and the furthest thing you expect from Darth Vader, in one sense, is a nice little boy. Like how does he go from that to the most evil, scariest character ever? Well, that's the task George gave himself was to figure out how to tell that story. So it's a cool way to, for sure. It's a cool way to start.
Yeah. Something I was going to comment on too, going back a little bit, is I like the contrast between Jar Jar, Padme, and Anakin here. Because again, like you said, here's these misfits we all have in the room together. But just looking at Jar Jar, who's a full-grown adult, contrast him with Padme and Anakin, who have both been forced to grow up fast.
Oh yeah. Ooh,
I mean, who's the more childish of them all? It's Jar Jar, the adult in the room.
Yeah. Wow. Good point.
But you have the Queen here, who's 14 years old, and you have the savior of the chosen galaxy, changer right here, and Anakin, who's what, 10, I think at this point, 10 or 11 or something like that, and and it's these two kids here that are far out maturing Jar Jar, and I don't mean that as a slam on Jar Jar. It's just a different innocence, and just the reality of the worlds they've been put in. And I just like, I don't know how much is intentional, kind of what you said there, but I like that. Even in this conversation here we get with Anakin and Padme, their first introduction, where he says, "Are you an angel?" I mean, he's like, it could be cheesy, but you get the sense that he really means it. I mean, he's, I don't know. I mean, you don't get the sense that this is a 10-year-old talking to a junior high girl he has a crush on. I mean, you get the sense that he really feels this, and just the way he acts it out and he plays it. And you just get the sense that he asks this very genuinely, like, "Are you really an angel?" He's not trying to flatter her, you just see who he is. And, she is kind of flattered by it and amused with him. Like you said, kind of going back to that naive, feel where she's just kind of looking around, taking it all in. You get that sense of, here's the naive young queen still. And she's like, what are you talking about? Yeah. But I don't know. I like this interaction. A lot of people were bothered by it, and bothered by Anakin's, I mean, just being a kid, everyone really razzed on him for being oh my goodness, Jake Lloyd for being a bad actor, but he feels like a 10-year-old kid to me. This is what a 10-year-old kid would do. And especially a slave who's been forced to grow up. Like, he's trying to be serious. He's trying to be mature. He's been forced to learn these things early, and survive. So anyway, I have a lot of thoughts on all that, but what are your thoughts on this dialogue, this interaction? And
I like everything you're saying.
For?
Yeah, for sure. I like everything you're saying with that. It's really interesting. I don't know if you've ever seen many interviews or kind of behind the scenes stuff of Jake Lloyd, but he was a really, really smart kid for his, like, how old he was. Like, he had an incredible vocabulary. He was very, what I'm not right now, eloquent. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. It was very, very smart, and he was very, kind of wise beyond his years, and just made me think of that when you said that Anakin and Padme both have kind of had to grow up too fast. They've seen a little bit too much of life a little too early on. Like, Anakin is a slave. Like, he's taking care of the shop as a kid. He's got a job. He's working as a kid. He hasn't had enough time probably to play and hang out with other kids as he would have liked, because he's a slave, and she's got all this responsibility as a 14-year-old. Yeah, so it's a good point, but I wonder if that's something that George saw in him when he cast him, because you just see him, like, I was not nearly as articulate and smart as that kid was when I was 9 or 10 or whatever old he was. It was just really impressive. It was just really impressive. There was something in him, and in the making of episode 1, you do see a bit of the casting process for Anakin, where they get it down to like 3 different actors, and Jake is one of them. And I remember my parents kind of thinking like, oh, well, they should have gone with this other kid. He's way a better actor. And I thought, like, yeah, like, but part of it is that the kid is acting. The part is the kid doesn't seem genuine. Like, something about Jake I always felt was very, like, genuine. You brought it up. Like, he's not using a line on Padme or anything. Like, he's too young to even understand that. He's just saying, it's just a kind of kid thing when kids kind of say things that are just sort of kind of inappropriate, or kind of like, that's a weird way to open. You, as an adult, you wouldn't open the conversation like that. Kids just say the things like, are you, they just say, yeah, I'm trying to think of an example, but like, like I've heard stories like kids saying like, are you pregnant? Like, or do you have a baby? Like, to fat. Someone who is like, oh, exactly. It's like, are you, exactly. It's like, maybe we shouldn't say that. Yeah, that's not the first thing we say.
There's no filter. Yep.
Exactly. And I think that's something you saw I feel like as a filmmaker, maybe Lucas saw that in Jake, that there was something genuine about him, that he wasn't trained to act. It wasn't like a child actor. He was more just trying to be real, and I feel like he is a good, for, again, there's people say great child actors. Like there's not a ton of like this. The bar for a great child actor, as you know, as defined by most of the other movies you see with kids actors in them, that's not like super high. It's not like kids are going to be achieving this insane sense of realism. Like for a kid actor, I think he's doing great.
Yeah, I do too.
And I don't think you could ask for more of a kid actor. I think he does a fantastic job. And I think in terms of, I like what you talk about him bringing up the fact that he calls her like, "Are you an angel?" Because although he goes to explain like, you know, I hear the deep space pilots talking about them, you know, most beautiful creatures in the universe. He's just like, "Oh, this girl's pretty," you know, and are you an angel? I like that the fact that that's his first words to Padme, right? Like it's foreshadowing his idolization of her and how high a pedestal he's putting her on, right? And like later on, like that he still sees her as an angel. He still sees her as this this ideal, this paragon that just can't be compromised. And if that's the moment that's threatened, he freaks out. You know, he doesn't really you know, he's grown attached to her and the idea of her, and he's not really you see in Clone Wars actually, right, where he sometimes he doesn't really let her be herself, doesn't let her be a human. Like when I think it's Senate Spy, where she has to deal with Clovis, where he's like, "I won't let you do this." She's like, "Oh, you're not going to let me do this?" Like he's not really, you know, which I'm sure is I'm not married, but I'm sure there's a lot of conversations with between spouses sometime where it's like, okay, like you don't get to decide everything I'm doing. You know, it's a weird dynamic that he's kind of has with her. That their relationship isn't like super healthy all the time, which of course, because it's what leads to falling apart. But I just like that you get a sense of that. The first line, that the first interaction they have is him saying, you know, comparing her to an angel. Like she's just this perfect purity and beauty and all this stuff that he wants to. Eventually, he falls in love with and will do anything to protect, and of course ends up destroying it unintentionally. But I like that, and also I think she's, you know, right away you get the sense that he's like, I talked to all the traders and space pilots, and he's looking for anything that is away from Tatooine, away from where he is. He's looking, and so she represents like something that you never find on Tatooine. Like she clearly stands out to him. He's like, nothing this beautiful is on this planet, this dirty, gross planet that I'm on. So like that's why his first thought is like, she must be this angel that I've heard of that's from far away from wherever I'm at, from Tatooine. Yeah, so just like that, he's very always concerned with. He's looking to the stars. He's a slave, but he doesn't really. His mind isn't trapped here. He's constantly dreaming about. He's like, I want to be the first one to see them all. You know, all the different star systems. Right. That's he's always constantly looking for that. And so that's also kind of part of him. Is part of his interaction with her. Is you learn a lot about him and his perspective there.
Yeah. I think that's great, and you do get the sense too that she is. I don't know if George intended this time, but it sure seems like it. Like she kind of is an angel in his world because she's stepping down out of paradise. Like the Queen of Paradise is stepping down into his world. And you would never see anything like that. And that's very an angelic thing, you know. I mean, to Anakin, he really is seeing her as like, you know, descending from heaven.
I think that's a good point. I think you're spot on there. Yeah.
Yeah, and like you said, there's nothing like that out in Tatooine at all. Because I mean, what kind of queen would step down to Tatooine? You know, and I think this is again sort of the beginning of her arc in the sense of like, oh man, these people down on normal Earth here, or in this case, even under Earth Tatooine kind of thing, they're real people. You know, it's that naive stuff being opened. Her eyes are being opened. You know, she's learning. I don't know if George intended that or not, but it sure seems like, yeah, he is seeing her as an angel from heaven.
Yeah.
And then I
like contrast that. Oh, go ahead.
No, that's okay. Go ahead. I think you're going to say something.
No. I think I'm going to go in a different. You finish yours because I think I'm going to go in a different direction here. But go finish yours.
Oh, okay. What was I going to say? Oh, I just like how you said he's very much capturing that Skywalker feel of what Yoda says to Luke in Empire Strikes Back. You know, Jedi crave not these things. You know, his mind never on where he is, what he's doing. You get that sense here because of like one of the first things Anakin says to her is, "I'm a pilot. I'm going to get out of here. You know, I'm going to fly away. I'm going to go to the stars. You know, I've heard these guys and I want to go." Yeah. I just, you see that reflected in Anakin here too. But that was all I had there on that.
No, yeah, for sure. Yeah, totally. And then that's a great connection between him and Luke. Yeah, always looking off to the future, to the horizon. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and what was I gonna say? Oh, yeah, his reaction to her, like, "Oh, you're an angel," and then her like disbelief when she finds out he's a slave, right? Because again, because part of that is her, learning, like, it's like, oh, wait, there's this whole world that I'm, well, naive, to keep using that word naive, but it's the perfect word. She's naive to. She's unaware of, like, oh, there's slavery in the galaxy, like, what's going on here? And I love his reaction to being called a slave, because she's like, was it, my mom and I were sold to guard the hut, whatever. And she's like, "You're a slave?" And he says, "I'm a person, and my name is Anakin." So again, he hates this idea. Don't call me a slave. He's like, "I'm not a slave." He introduces himself as a pilot. That's how he thinks of himself. So like, as the first time he's called a slave, he reacts angrily, and he's not. He will not be held back. He refuses to think of himself as a slave, someone who's oppressed, and he just won't. And he won't stand to be treated like one either. Like, it's very quickly he goes from this nice little boy to the first hint of darkness we get from him is when someone says, "Oh, you have limitations. Oh, you are oppressed. You have problems." And he goes, "No," like immediately, like, "No, that's not who I am." And of course, at this point, it's a good thing. He shouldn't believe that. That's the attitude that'll get him out of this. But as people continue to say no to him, or to say, like, "Oh," or put boundaries and limitations on him, that's the seed of his eventual downfall. So, and in this first scene, the first time you meet him, you get that. You get his good heart, his good intentions, but there is this darkness there for sure. At this point, we don't even pick up on, because it's well placed. Like, he shouldn't be happy about being a slave. He shouldn't want to be called a slave. But that reaction to, yeah, being put in a box, he's gonna keep, that's gonna stick with him throughout his whole life. But but yeah, he introduces himself as a pilot, right? So a pilot isn't stuck anywhere. They can leave and explore. Like, in his mind, he's not stuck here. Like, a pilot is someone who is free, and he likes to talk to the traders and pilots and hear about places other than Tatooine. So he immediately sets up this longing he has to be elsewhere. And one little thing, I think I've talked to you about this before, but this is not a grand theme of anything or anything, but it's kind of connected. It's kind of significant, but I didn't pick up on this for the longest time, but Anakin may not be from Tatooine. He has an unknown origin. So in more ways than one, as we come to find out, he has an unknown origin, right? And so that's a connection to Luke. Like, they were both born elsewhere, and they get waylaid on Tatooine. So they're waiting for the day when they can leave and be where they're supposed to be. But she says, "How long have you been here?" And he says, "Since I was very little, 3, I think." And so it's never confirmed. But I'm like, wait a second, was he? He might not have actually been born on Tatooine. He might have been someplace else. But like every other character, he gets stuck. Tatooine's is like this black hole, this vortex just like sucks everything in, and you get stuck there. The Bermuda Triangle of the galaxy, where you just get stuck there, and everyone's trying to leave, everyone's trying to get out. It reminds me of it's very much I don't know if you ever saw Casablanca, but I have that poster right there. But yeah, Casablanca is a place where everyone gets stuck, and everyone's trying to get over back to America, or not back to America, trying to get on a plane to America and get out of there. And there's a lot of similar feel, like the kind of marketplace, a lot of eclectic people from all different corners of the world. It's very similar to Tatooine, very similar to Mos Espa feeling. So it kind of makes me think of that. But I just thought it was interesting. Like, oh, maybe Anakin is not from Tatooine, and having the hero have like an uncertain origin. They're not quite sure where he comes from, and actually, in more ways, like I said, more ways than one with Anakin, as we'll learn later. That's just a very very archetypal, very mythological idea, but also just kind of fun. As a fan, I was like, oh, wait a second, maybe Anakin is not from Tatooine? That doesn't, wow, it blew my mind when I first learned that. I'm like, oh. And I think like certain stories and books and the legends, and he used kind of, like, I think his story was that he was born on Tatooine. I think it's still true in the new canon as well. Not that I really care about legend canon or new canon, but I just think it's interesting that as far as the movies are concerned, as far as Lucas is concerned, he's not he doesn't make it clear where Anakin was born. So we'll see. I just think it's interesting that it could be setting up this idea that the mythological hero is kind of, has a kind of divine origin, right? As we'll learn
Yeah.
later.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
This mystery figure. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I just caught that now reading that actually. And the subtitles like, oh, wow. I never really picked up on that. And then you flesh it out. That's really neat. Yeah. I like that. And again, I like how George just leaves a lot open. He doesn't have to fill in every single gap. He kind of lets your imagination go a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. I like that, man. And I like this interaction here too, where we're still getting back to Padme's. She's just a young girl. Like we see her as a young girl who's still naive. She's kind of looking around, and she responds right off the bat to Anakin. Well, I'm sorry, this is all new to me. I don't know. This is brand new. I've never been in a place like this. This is a strange place. And you see her looking around like this is a fire hydrant hitting me with all this stuff. I'm from paradise.
Exactly.
This is not paradise. And I really like what you were saying, how Tatooine is kind of this black hole. I mean, how much of a picture is that for our state of humanity? I mean, we can all relate to that. We all know, I mean, it's pretty much every Disney movie ever that we're not totally content with this life. Everybody feels that, and it's because, I mean, ultimately we look at Genesis, how we were kicked out of the garden into the wilderness, just like here. And we're wandering around. We want to go back to the garden. But we're not there, and we need the Savior to bring us back into the garden. And you see that right here, in this episode 1, they've left the garden, sort of kicked out in a sense. I mean, they escaped, but they couldn't stay there.
They didn't want to leave. She would have stayed if she could have had the choice. But yeah.
Definitely would have. And the whole thing is like, we got to get back there. And Anakin's like, I gotta take up my destiny. I gotta do this. I mean, we all feel that as human beings. I think that's why pretty much all the old Disney movies resonate with everybody, because we all know something's wrong. This is not ultimate fulfillment. We need to get back to the garden. So I think that's a really cool picture.
Yeah. How do we restore the garden? Yeah. How do we get the snake out of the garden? Right. How do we do that? And the key is, you have to. Well, you can't. The help has to be. You have to find the Savior and become who you need to be as well. Become the willing participant, not the naive person who's just content to just like lounge around in paradise and not do anything. Like, you have to take responsibility. You have to, do the hard things in order to facilitate. To get the thing back that you want, you have to fight for it. It's a struggle. It's gonna be difficult because we're all in that place that we don't want to be. We're all less than what we could be. We all fall short of our potential, and we all, want to. We're all slaves to something, hoping to look past this, like look into the future, into the stars, and go, oh, what if I was up there? What if I didn't have to deal with this? And when someone comes and offers you a way out, do you take it? Do you take I'll take the life of a slave? It's it's hard. I don't want to do the pod race. I don't want to train to become a Jedi. That sounds difficult. When someone's literally offering you salvation, and Qui-Gon, offers freedom to Anakin, does he take it or not? And so the hero's journey is us saying yes and having to go through the trials, the ordeal to get to that point where we can restore the garden again. So yeah, that is so cool how that is all. I mean, it's in so many different stories, but since we're talking about Star Wars, it's here and it's awesome. That reflection of that great truth. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, well, and every single one of us can relate to that. I mean, that's the story of humanity. I mean, there's not a single person who can't relate to that. Even if you like where you are in life, we all know there's more out there. There's more. I know there's more. Where is paradise? Where's the garden? And Anakin gets that first glimpse of that with his angel here. Oh wow, there's something out there. Yeah. And I love that. And I just can't emphasize enough how much I love the unexpected heroes here. Here we just get these, like you said, this band of misfits that everybody else is cast off. I mean, because you'd think this story would be, the Chancellor and the leaders of the Republic, and it's going to be all these awesome, powerful Jedi, but really it's not. Yeah. It's this family story of this backwater crew. And we're reminded that at the end of the scene where it goes right back to Jar Jar, who's messing with the droids.
Doing exactly what he was told not to do. Yeah.
It's just, What a great scene of just insight into your real heroes. Because I mean, like you said, we've been following the Jedi, these all power, no, up to our knowledge so far, these all powerful guys. And we've been seeing this phantom, these all powerful phantoms somewhere out there, these big, huge galaxy things. But we get this window into like, no, here's our real heroes that are actually underneath all of this. All these little
these
guys,
complicated, messy ones, that are
Mhm.
not the clear cut, powerful Jedi, powerful good, powerful bad. It's like, no, it's these little weird ones in between. These weird, whatever they are. There's Gungan slave and naive ruler who's like unprepared for the task in front of her. It's like, yeah, that's clearly these are the much more interesting characters. But yeah, like as you said, they're the misfits, and they're the ones that we're going to be. It's Rudolph, right? it's the story of Rudolph. Like it's the one with the shiny bright red nose. That's the reindeer that's going to be the key to everything, not the regular looking one.
It was and so cool about Star Wars, and well, I mean, it's just mythology and scripture, all of it. It's so unexpected. It's not how anyone would have expected it to go. Nobody would have expected, Jesus to be the Messiah. Nobody would have expected Bilbo to, or Frodo or either of those guys to save the world. Nobody would expect a 10-year-old boy and from what we know, a jester and from our perception, a peasant girl, basically, that would, in this part of the story, to save the world, or save the galaxy. And I love how George just pulls us along too, and he does the big twist with falling to the dark side, even when all hope seems lost. And we'll come to that. It's just so unexpected, and then he's unexpectedly saved.
Yeah, like as soon as we get comfortable with the idea that this unexpected hero is going to be the hero, like, oh, and then it's a twist on a twist, like you said. That's a good point. Yeah, where it's like, oh, once it's teed up for success. Wait, what happened? We were so close. We were so close, and then this huge fall from grace, and then it's like, yeah, what a great lesson there. It's like even all this power, things can be going great for you, but even that's not going to save you. You can still fall further than you could ever thought possible when things are going that great for you. And of course, yeah, it's so good. I love the story. Anyway,
it's so good, and that's all of Star Wars. I mean, everything is so unexpected. It takes so many unexpected turns that who on earth would expect the Dark Lord is the hero, or that this little boy is going to be the Dark Lord, or that this girl is the queen, or the Dark Lord is saved by his son, or that the hero throws down his lightsaber. It's just
that's totally
so many unexpected.
Yeah, actually, I'm just thinking about it. Yeah, like Anakin's entire journey is just one surprise after another. It's like where there's no way this little slave kid is going to be able to be the hero. Oh, he is the hero. Okay. Well, he's here. Great. He's the hero. Awesome. Oh, wait, that's totally unexpected. I didn't expect the hero to just turn to the villain. Okay. Whoa. And then like the last big surprise is like, well, this guy is so evil. There's no way. Oh, he's going to turn good again. Oh, like that's a total surprise. I mean, we're used to it now, but like that's a total surprise as well. The whole story is pointing to the fact that Luke has to kill Vader, and Luke's going to be the hero, and he's going to be the one, by killing Vader and Sidious, we're going to win. It's like, no, actually, it's so every like significant moment in Anakin's life is this huge unexpected surprise. I never really strung those thoughts all together before. That's super cool. Wow, you're smart. Thanks for putting that together. Thanks for putting that together for me. That's so cool. That's such a cool arc.
I really like that, because if Star Wars ended at Episode 3, like the first 10 minutes, that would be it. That's the story we'd all expect. Like, here's this young boy who overcomes his darkness and wins. He's the hero. But doesn't. That's just halfway through the story. It's like, oh, man. Yeah, big twist. I just love that, because as I've been studying, I'm a pastor, like thinking through Jesus and his arc, and the Jews watch him. They had their expectations all the way planned out. Like, this is the Messiah, man. He's gonna be Anakin at the top of Revenge of the Sith. And Jesus is like, no, that's not how this works. They're just so thrown off by it. And we love that. I mean, how many times do we love a big story twist, big plot twist,
Oh, yeah.
And Star Wars is just so full of them. So it's fun. It's fun to connect those dots. This is the first time I've really connected that dot myself.
Yeah, wow, that's super
so cool.
Yeah.
And you've helped me think through that and see that through this, because that's such a huge theme in this movie, is the unexpected. Like, wow. Okay. There's so good. Yeah. So, it's so good. But I love it, man. I love it. I think this is one of the reasons why this is the greatest movie saga of all time. And it's still going after 50 years. We're still love this. Yeah. I think these are human elements. It's not just a cool sword, laser sword in a spaceship. No. I think you called it once. That's just the wrapping paper. The true story.
Yeah,
is
that's
in
the metaphor I like. Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
the gift is really what's inside. Like the wrapping paper is cool. That's what gets you excited, right? Like, ooh, I don't know. As a kid, you're like, I want to open that present because it's got Buzz Lightyear wrapping paper, or it's got, whatever it is. Whatever it is that was cool to me. But then, the wrapping paper, really, that eventually that gets thrown aside. That gets thrown away, and what you have inside is the actual gift. That's the stuff inside is the real. Or it's like the decorations on the cake, right? Cakes are good to look at, but they're even better to eat, right? So X-Wings and lightsabers, it's so cool that, what's great about Star Wars is that it's a great story. It's a great, the gift, the heart of the package inside is awesome, but it's also packaged in a great way too. We get X-Wing, because it's not like, there's plenty of podcasts and plenty of YouTube videos devoted to just the minutia of the lightsabers and the ships. And I love that stuff too. And so it's like, there's nothing wrong with that, even though I'm focusing here on like the story and the themes and all that. It's just that, like, it's both. They're both. It's a great, it's like a great meal, like a 5-star restaurant. Like, it's good food, but it's also presented to you in a really cool way. And yeah, the presentation is a big part of it for sure. But yeah, I love the meat of it. The heart of it is that's what keeps you coming back for more. We're gonna stop there for now. Next up, we're going to talk more about the early seeds of darkness in Anakin, and we're going to figure out if that really is Quinlan Vos having a drink at a random cafe on Tatooine. Thanks for listening as always. On to the next one.